What's going on, guys? It's Pure Turbo here, and today we're going to talk about my Stamina Dragonknight heavy attack build. Now, this build can be used by anybody. It is easy to get gear, easily replaceable gear with substitutes that are just almost as good as the trial gear here. The two-piece monster set is one of the easiest to get, and it's interchangeable. You do not have to have this monster set. So let's go ahead and take a look at the gear. So Two-Fang Snake, right? It's the trial gear. It comes from Sanctum Ophidia. A good replacement for this would be Spriggans. It's only 4k less penetration, and you still get some 2, 3, 4 bonuses. I think they're mainly stamina, but they're very good replacement for this trial gear. With that being said, Sanctum Ophidia is actually the easiest trial in my opinion out of the veteran ones. And I'm not sure, but maybe you can get this in normal. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. And if you can get this in normal, excuse me, if you can get it in normal, then it'll be super easy to get. And if you do hard mode in the veteran trial, then you can get gold jewelry. Not required. You can use Thunderflame jewelry here, which is also very easy to get in veteran City of Ash, or you can just buy Spriggans jewelry here and use them, and use Thunderflame body pieces. The weapons, Thunderflame you can farm, Spriggans you can buy. So just take your poison, pick your poison there. So Two-Fang Snake, Thunderflame. So what this does is this gives us a ton of penetration, and allows us to use precise weapons here. You're gonna want 2 daggers. I just haven't gotten around to the other dagger. And before I go any further, you're going to want to be a Khajiit. Now, you don't have to be a Khajiit, but I highly recommend it. Even Orc, just Khajiit is so nice because we're doing heavy attacks. We're using weapon damage on all of our enchants right here. So we get to keep 522 weapon damage on our jewelry. We get to have 2 damage sets. We're using max health, max stamina food, just like last patch. And we're heavy attacking, right? So we're getting all of our sustain. We don't need red guard. We don't need any sustain in our kit. We just need heavy attacks. And heavy attacks are doing all the work. They're applying this debuff that's for you and your teammates. And we're having massive penetration along with double daggers. Khajiit is perfect for this build. Absolutely perfect. It's beautiful. With that being said, I'm a red guard. I have a Khajiit as well. He just doesn't have caltrops. So I just wanted to show that you can pretty much lose a little bit of stamina for more crit. Right now I don't have the crit buff, but you'll have a ton of crit. You'll have like 85% crit or something like really close to 90, and it is fantastic because what happens is when you do a dual wield heavy attack, both of them hit at the same time, and so when you get a high crit chance, you're always, because dual wield heavies are faster and they can crit, and when they both crit, they can almost equal out to the amount of like two-hand heavy attacks. I'm sorry, Destro heavy attacks. Two-hand heavy attacks are actually one of the weaker ones. But if both dual wield heavy attacks crit, you're looking at some serious damage, and that's why crit chance is very important in terms of dual wield heavy attacks, because they're very fast. They hit twice, and if they both crit, you're looking at some pretty big DPS. With that being said, Thunderflame could be found in City of Ash 1 or 2. I find City of Ash 1 to be much easier, and you can do it on normal, which is extremely, extremely good, because then you can get 4 DPS people in a dungeon and just mow it down with self-heals. Don't really need a tank or healer, and you just go to the last boss and you can fight. You can get these weapons, and they're really easy to get. I actually got these while I was trying to farm Burning Spellweave, and I just kept them out of sheer luck, so I kept getting these before I actually got my Burning Spellweave armor. Let's just say that. They're pretty easy to get. You want 2 daggers here because we have max penetration. The Axe Bleed isn't that effective, although it is nice, but it's not that effective, so we'll use the extra crit. So you'll see a 5% increase in crit here, then another 8 if you're Khajiit, and then you take a pot, you're looking at some serious crit. The Monster Helm is nice, but it's not required. So Crag is very nice in terms of DPS and in terms of one item piece. allowing us to definitely go to precise and no CP and depend. But if you were to use, let's say, you can use Veladreth here as well, another solid choice. You can use Mephalas. Every time you heavy attack, there's a 10-second AoE dot. So this will actually give you more AoE damage, which this build lacks a little bit compared to other classes, such as the Stamsork. So maybe Mephalas is more your line. Also comes with a 1-piece health. So if we just take a look here, we have got 16k here. And now we have 17.5. Also, a side note before I go any further, we want all medium, all divines, stam enchanted. That'll give you massive damage. So if the Mephalas is more your route because of the health and the AoE damage, by all means go for it. It's a really good set, and it kind of goes with the heavy attacks anyway, so it's really nice. So yeah, we have those two, and then I think there was one more. Maybe I'm mistaken. Okay, I was mistaken. Anyway, so we have Mephalas, we have Veladreth, Krog. I like Krog because it gives you that massive penetration that you'll always have. You don't have to worry about debuffs or anything. You have 5k pen from Two Fang. You've got 3,440 from Sunderflame. Then you have 1,935 if you have Golden Krog. I don't have Divines here, so I'm not golding that out, but it'll be 1,935, right? So you'll have big penetration here, and no, you won't be overpinning. And that will have, just like we talked about, double precise. You'll be getting 7% from here. Very good. So yeah, this is the gear. Back bar Maelstrom bow. If you don't have one, you can use a Master's bow. If you don't have that, you can use a dead bow with any enchant. It could be weapon damage. It could be poison, disease. You know, whatever you like. And it'll proc light attacks while you're on your back bar. Sorry, I'm just a little sick right now, so I'm having the sniffles here. So yeah, we have pretty much big penetration in here. All the stand builds will benefit from Sunderflame. So if you are running this build, just let your team know that you have Sunderflame in group. That way, if there's any stamina players in your group, they can benefit from this buff, and that also tells them that they can remove one of their sharpened weapons and either use infused or precise. I highly suggest precise because what the infused does is it gives that enchant a little bit more weapon damage, but we're looking at precise, which is 3.5% all the time crit. So I highly suggest precise. It's very effective for all your dots. So yeah, guys, that's the gear. We'll get into the skills and passives in a moment. I'll see you there. Alrighty, so we're gonna Alrighty, so we're here with the skills and passives section, and we're going to talk about how they work in relation to each other. So I'm putting all of the builds into one on the skills and passives part, so I don't have to film them separately. So bear with me here. We're going to go through a couple different things. Pretty much all the builds use the same thing bars wise. The only difference is if you're using BMA daggers, you gotta have rapid strikes here, and that's the only difference. So also if you're using a light attack build, you might have this here instead of molten armaments. but that's about the only difference here. So we're going to talk about the skills and how they work and why they work so well. So let's start with the front bar here. We got Rending Slashes. Again, very effective bleed. It goes through all armor. So it doesn't scale off penetration, but what happens is if you're using a heavy attack build like Flame Knight or the Poison Knight, you don't have a lot of penetration, so Rending Slashes becomes more effective, which is very nice. If you're using Two Fang Snake, you have a lot of penetration, and so it becomes a little bit less effective, but it's still a very nice dot. Also, you can empower it with the Rapid Strikes build with the VMA daggers. So we got Rending Slashes, we have Venomous Claw. Now, this ability is strong, very strong. It has an initial hit, it has the damage over time, and the poison damage over time is increased. The damage is increased for the duration, throughout the duration. It deals 12% more damage every 2 seconds. That is amazing. So you're going to want to let this duration go all the way through to get the max benefit. And it only costs 1,000 stamina. That's awesome. We have 1,500 stamina cost right here, 1,000 stamina cost right here. Boom. Already low cost. And if we're doing the Maelstrom rotation, we can sustain it very easily. If we're doing the heavy attack rotation, no problem. So we have Deadly Cloak here, no brainer. It does cost a little bit more because it's an AoE skill, but it is big time defense. It does 25% reduced damage from AoE abilities. Very good. I like to keep it up 100% of the time, just as a defensive standpoint. Also helps your healers out because you don't want to take big damage. You'll take less damage. It doesn't do a whole lot of DPS in single target. It does do a good amount, and then gets increased by the dual wield passives. But again, it's mainly here for the defense, more so than the offense. So this ability right here, this spot, is Noxious Breath. It's going to give you Major Fracture if you're in solo play. Very good. Again, another little tip here, you can apply this to the portal and VMA. So when the mobs are spawning, you can apply Major Fracture to them. Also very good for boss burns. It has a weak initial hit, but a decent dot damage over time ability, and it's poison damage, which is great for the poison build if you're using the Venom set. It's another added dot that's really good. Lasts 10 seconds, which is pretty long. Doesn't cost a whole lot, but it is an AoE skill, but it doesn't cost a whole lot. You can see that it's 700 less than Deadly Cloak. I think the reason for that is because it's conal and not full AoE. So that's pretty nice. But if you're using the Rapid Strikes VMA dagger build, you'll have this here. If you're using the Light Attack build, you'll have Evil Hunter here. So on the Light Attack build, you'll have 3% more weapon damage here. But on the Heavy Attack build, you'll have Molten Armament here. And what this does is this gives your heavy attacks 40% more damage while active. So this is very important. Again, it costs Magicka, so we're pretty cool there. The only downside to this ability, I would say, is that it doesn't give weapon damage. It gives, Major Sorcery, which is spell damage. If it gave weapon damage, spell damage, and then had, this one does heavy attack damage and the other one did something else, that would be pretty awesome for solo play or for people that don't like to use a bunch of potions to get their buff. But for those that are doing like trials and stuff, you're most likely using weapon pots, so it's not too bad. So this is going to give our heavy attack big damage. Really big damage. It's going to make up for, not using a skill. Heavy attacks are going to give us our resources, and so this really plays into that, increasing our damage even more. Again, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker here for the extra 5% weapon damage. Very nice. Again, if you substitute out one of the sets that was in the build to improve the build, so say you took off Sunder Flame for War Machine, you would want to use Flawless Dawnbreaker over Standard because Standard costs 250. You'd get better uptime on Dawnbreaker. If on the Combustion build, if you wanted to substitute out one of the sets, so if you wanted to substitute 2-piece Krog and 3 Vicious Ophidian from the Maelstrom build, your bar would look like this, and you would want Rend, because Rend is 25 ult more than Dawnbreaker and will do substantially greater DPS because you're empowering it with the VMA daggers, and it'll get almost full duration of the Major Slayer, which is extremely strong, especially on a DK when you spec into a lot into Thaumaturge CP. It's very, very good. So that's the VMA. This would be the VMA bar buildup right here for if you wanted to do a War Machine with the Two Fanged Snake setup with the VMA daggers. I know this is a lot into one video, so don't worry about that. So if you're using the heavy attack, no VMA dagger build, then your bars look like that. Just like that. And all the bars will be on the website. I just wanted to go over how the passives work with the skills. So for the Stam Dragonknight, we have burning and poison effects are going to be 66% stronger on a Dragonknight. Also another thing is increases the damage of your fiery breaths, all this good stuff, and the duration. Poison and flame damage area of effect, so pretty much just Noxus Breath will do more damage with that passive. You don't really need any of these passives except for this last one, which is a nice spell damage bonus, or I'm sorry, spell resistance bonus. Again, lasts longer on your Molten Armaments, which is really nice. Battle Roar right here. So this is going to be a part of your sustain, right? So when you use an ultimate, you get 46 health, magicka, and stamina for each point of the ultimate's cost. So 46 on the 125. So each point of the ultimate's cost, you'll get an extra 46 in each resource. They changed this. It used to go off of how much I believe your stat pool was. I think they changed this. Yep, they did. So also this one right here, which is pretty freaking awesome. Alright, so we already have a lot of sustain in the heavy attack builds. But when we click Molten Armaments, we're going to get some stamina back here. Right here. We'll get 990 stamina back. It used to give you 5% of your max stam back, I believe, but they changed this again. I believe to character level, so it's always going to be this value no matter what. And also we get minor brutality when we activate this ability. So in some of my DPS tests, you'll see that the tank is doing Igneous Shield. Pretty much, it's a guaranteed that you're going to have a DK in your group, and he's going to be doing Igneous Shield. So the minor brutality buff isn't much of a big deal because you're almost 100% time. I would say 100% of the time you're always going to have this buff, because he needs to cast it one time out of 20 seconds, and bet your ass he's casting that more than once every 20. So this will be, all the bars will be on the website if you get confused. So for each individual build, there'll be a link in the description, and you can go look at the bars. I just wanted to go over the passives in one go here. For dual wield, there is a increased damage for dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So that means Rending Slashes, Deadly Cloak, Rapid Strikes, if you're using the VMA build, and Rend get extra damage under 25% health. Now the DK doesn't have an execute, so this is a nice boost to our damage once we get 25. Everyone's going to be swapping over to Killer's Blade, Impel, Jesus Beam, Radiant Oppression, and the sorts are going to execute at 20%, whatnot. We don't have an execute, but we have a dual wield execute, which is actually very, very nice, especially if you're using the VMA dagger build with War Machine using Rend. Let's see. What else? Oh, so that's pretty much the front bar. Again, for the builds that have low penetration, we want 2 axes, and so the axes will proc a bleed. And since we have 2 axes, we'll get a 16% chance to proc that bleed, which is very, very nice. Another thing is the daggers will give us 5% crit rating, which is very, very huge. That's why we want 2 daggers. If we have max penetration, definitely want those daggers. All right, so let's move on to the back bar. The back bar here is poison injection. Poison injection is a phenomenal skill. It's ranged. It has an initial hit. It has a great damage over time. It lasts great, a really good amount, and it has an execute part. So this is another weapon thing that we have for an execute, which is very, very awesome. Endless Hell, best damage ability that the stamina classes have. Goes great with the Maelstrom bow here. Again, if you don't have the Maelstrom bow, you can go with the ones I suggested earlier, but the Maelstrom bow boosts this damage to such high potential. It's so good, and this skill attacks on a 0.5, which makes it super effective for proccing things, for doing damage to keep up a certain buff like Two-Fang Snake, or if you're a Sork, you crit surge, etc. I know we're not talking about Sorks, but this skill is super, super strong. Ramming Trap here, again, on the back bar. We're going to place it down before we do our Hail, and then we're going to do Poison Injection and so forth. You want a light attack in between all of these, because this passive is actually very important. Very important. Only in certain cases would you not really care as much about this passive, but for all the builds that don't require Maelstrom daggers, stuff like that, or if you're using axes and so forth, this is extremely strong. So every time you light attack, you gain 5% damage on your bow abilities, which is 2 abilities right here, by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. That's a lot of 5s. So 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, right? That's strong. You're getting so much damage on top of your VMA bow, increasing your hail, on top of Hawkeye, increasing your hail. Oh, it's so strong, right? Super, super, super strong. And you'll get the max benefit out of it if you light attack, boom, 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 and then come back. Your hail's got 5 seconds on it, whatnot. 7 seconds when you flip over, and then boom, it's getting so much increase in damage. It's extremely strong. Razor Caltrops, we can sustain it on the heavy attack builds. We can sustain it on the dubious food builds. It is good to go. We can sustain it on DK in general because we get so much resources back from using an ultimate, using an Earth and Heart ability, dubious food, or heavy attacking, whatnot. Sustain is great, and so we can carry the weight of the high cost Caltrops, casting in every 12 seconds. It's perfectly fine. Now this skill, right? Flames of Oblivion. This skill hits so hard for a flame damage skill, right? If we're speccing into high penetration, it's usually physical. And since this does flame damage, it scales off spell pen. So if we have sharpened weapons or points in master at arms, this skill hits hard. It always has hit hard throughout all of the patches. It's just a great single target skill. It just does so much damage per hit, as it's going out. Boom, boom, boom. You just click it once and it does its thing. This thing is awesome, and it lasts long. That's what I like. It lasts 15 seconds, just like Deadly Cloak. So you do that one last, and you just flip switch, and boom. It's this little, has a cool effect too. That's why I like it. And so it flies around you, and then it shoots at the enemy, and man, it hit strong. For a flame ability on a stand build, it hits really, really awesome. So we're using Standard of Might here. Again, if you're using a different setup, so like War Machine, you would be using your front bar ultimate, Rend or Dawnbreaker, or if you go with Standard of Might, this is also another good path. You could go with the bow on the back bar as well. It's all up to preference here. Standard is still a very strong ultimate, even though it does flame damage. It's still very strong for increasing your damage for 17 seconds. Yeah, 17 seconds of 15% increased damage. So when you use this ultimate, you're going to want to make sure that you have all your dots out, drop your ultimate, go back to your front bar, and then as your dots are going out, you're going to apply them again. And this does phenomenal damage. It always has been one of the best ultimates in the game, and it still holds strong, even though it costs $250. It's still a very, very good ultimate. But there is other options Again, if you're using the bow ultimate, you're going to want to use it last, right before you swap, because you want to get all those light attacks out, light attack, light attack, light attack, and then use the bow ultimate and then swap. And that way the bow has the full duration for the time it shoots to the time it's done. It'll be 5.2 seconds, I think, at max rank. And you want the turret morph. It'll shoot and it'll be boosted so much by the Hawkeye passive, you'll love it. So you can use that if you're using the Maelstrom daggers. You can use Rend with War Machine, etc. You can use Dawnbreaker if you're using War Machine on a heavy attack build that isn't using VMA daggers. There's so much to play with, guys, and it's all up to you. It's whatever you like. It's whatever works best for you will be the best for you. To put it simply as I can. So, guys, that was the skills and passives. Oh, before I forget, I always forget this. Very important alchemy. I'm pretty sure Outcast has a video guide on how to get this up pretty fast. It's super effective. It's a must-have because if you're using weapon damage pots, this will keep up your buff all the time, and it'll keep up your sustain all the time. It's very important to have this. Again, racial passives. Obviously, if you're using heavy attack build, go with Khajiit. If you're going, you need more sustain, Redguard is the king of that because it has stamina recovery, max stam, and stamina on hit. As far as other passives that are important, Slayer is very important because when you put on these skills here, you get 3% weapon damage for having them slotted, and on top of Flawless Dawnbreaker being 5%, and you get extra 3 from Evil Hunter, makes it very, very nice. If you're killing undead, Daedric, or werewolf, maybe you're in a dungeon or you're doing, Dragonstar Arena, there's also those things. And your Fighter's Guild abilities, you need this one if you're doing, again, first undead, Daedric, and werewolf, 20% stronger. Very, very good. I don't think there's any other things here except for, basically have your medium armor and your dual wield and your bow passive leveled, etc. So I think we're good here, guys. We're going to move on to the character sheet and take a look at it so you can compare stats, or maybe if you go without your gear, unlike me, I'm kind of poor here. Send me your money. JK. Alright, so you can send me the money. We'll take a look at the character sheet here, and so we can compare stats, and you can see the Mundus Stone, food, etc. So we'll head over to that section in a bit. See you there. Alright, so we're here at the character sheet for the Searing Venom build. Our stats are going to look pretty similar to all the rest of the builds. We're going to be using heavy attack. As you can tell, my physical penetration is a little low here on the base stats here. But we get Two-Fang Snake, we get Thunderflame, and we got Krog in there, so we're pretty much set on there, so don't be worried about that when you see that. Also, you want 2 daggers for this build, okay? We don't want an axe, so you'll have another 5% crit here. So you'll see 71%, and I highly suggest Khajiit, so you'll see another 8% there as well, the crit. And then when we take a potion, you're at 76 plus another 5, so you're at 81, and then another 8, you're close to 90. It's super, super good. The reason why we don't flip over to Shadows is because we're using dual wield heavy attacks. They're very quick. They hit twice. You want them to crit. The crit chance is very important, and we get a lot of crit hit damage from the DP anyway, now that it's additive. So it's all good. So Thief is very important to have here. We're going with max health, max stam food. Because we're using heavy attacks, we just want all the damage we can get. If your health is a little low for your liking, then you go ahead and put some points in health. Don't be afraid to do that. Whatever works best for you is what is best. I go with 16-2 because Evan will put me at 17-2, and then Warhorn will put me at 18-5, close to the 19, somewhere in there. And then because we're melee, we're near the shields of the tanks, and tanks are giving us pretty high shields this patch. So, and we have Deadly Cloak, so we're sitting pretty good. Although we don't have a class self heal thing like Crit Surge or anything like that. Also, I wanted to touch on one thing that you could do that I thought recently. Instead of Rending Slashes, you can use the other morph for Blood Craze. You'll have a little less damage on the initial, but you'll have a heal over time. So classes like DK, Nightblade, basically everyone but a Sork that doesn't have crit surge can use Blood Craze and get some extra healing, to top you off while you're getting shielded by the tanks, or maybe you're away from the healer, you're just not getting a heal, you get knocked back, whatever the case may be. You'll have some heals from Blood Craze. So basically, when we buff up, I'm gonna go broke doing this. When we buff up, we have a good crit. Obviously, we'll have 5% more if we use double daggers. Great weapon damage. We have a lot of penetration in the Searing Venom build. Two Fang Snake, Thunder Flame, Krog. If you use a different monster helm, then you can use one sharpened, one precise daggers, and we have massive amount of stamina. So you can use Khajiit. Very, very good. So our stat pool is looking pretty nice. Again, we'll be using heavy attacks. So stamina regen is not really a concern. Our crit's really high. Our damage is critting all the time. The Warhorns are pumping out. We're going crazy with the rearming trap. Big crits all the time from the CP. Yeah, so that's the stat sheet. Again, put points in health if you need them. Our physical and spell resistance is a little low because we don't have a buff from, like Hurricane that gives you damage and your defensive buffs. But even though that's not the case for the DK, again, like I said, we're melee. We're getting the shields from the tanks. Deadly Cloak. You can use Blood Craze on top of that, and you'll be super set. So, guys, this is the stat sheet for the Searing Venom build. And just remember that I have a medium armor non-divines, so you might see a little bit boost in that. Also, the crit chance, again, covered that. You want double daggers. Since we're using full pen, we definitely don't want an axe. You'll go double daggers with precise. You'll see big crit. If you're Khajiit, you'll be super happy you chose it. So we're not gonna do the champion points. I'll put those on the website. I'd go broke if I kept changing them for a video. I only have 59k to my name. So we're gonna move on to the add-ons and the DPS process, and I'll see you there. Alrighty, so we're here with the add-ons for DPS and rotation part of the video. I'm just going to go over some simple tips and tricks, what I do, the add-ons I use, and so forth. So let's get right into that. Let's check out those add-ons. So basically, the add-ons I use for DPS or in general would be Surrender. Surrender is going to give us our damage buff timers. Obviously, if you're on console, you're not going to have access to these. You're just going to have to use the in-game ones, but for the PC players here, we're just going to go over this real quick. So Surrender is going to basically have a bunch of aura control display groups. Your short, long, major, minor, toggled, ground, enchants, gear procs, passives, buffs, target debuffs. Target debuffs and target buffs. So what happens here is we don't necessarily need most of this information. Once we've learned our class, we learned what we're using. We don't need to see our major buffs. We don't need to see our toggle buffs. We would know things of nature. Our gear procs, we know what gear we're using, enchants and stuff like that. So we don't need to know proc. It is good information to see. Maybe if you had like damage text flying up, or a box here showing the damage, and then seeing your gear chance proc and seeing how they affect your damage and so forth. But other than that, we pretty much do not display most of this information. What we're going to display is ground targets AoEs, so things like Endless Hail, Caltrop, stuff like that, and target debuffs. What this is going to do is rending slashes and poison injection. Those are debuffs on the target. That's what they're considered as. Because they are applied per target. So if I look at this target and I apply poison injection, you'll see it. But if I look at this target, you won't see it. So that way you can keep kind of track of who you poison inject, because you can do that to multiple targets. If I just do raining flashes to this guy, he has a bleed on him. You can see the effect is actually visible as well. This guy will be bleeding and he'll be poisoned. This guy is just bleeding. So pretty cool stuff. Very, very useful add-on. Also the ground dots and stuff like that. Now let's just go ahead and get rid of that caltrops part of it. So when I throw caltrops, you see that it has like 2 timers. We only want 1 timer. We want the actual dot. So let's go in here and figure that out. So to do this is go to the debug option, turn on a aura display ID. When I throw caltrops, it's going to have 2. Oh, they're the same number, so I guess I can't do that. So let's say, for example, we don't want to know if the boss has major or if this ad has major fracture, right? See major fractures on there, 619. 11. Okay. Okay, so what we do is we'll go here, go to add-ons, Rindar, go to filters, blacklist, we'll type in 6191. And major fracture has been added to the blacklist and will no longer display. What this does is we add this, we'll no longer see that buff, because if we know our skill, it adds major fracture. We don't need that information in our window, right? So we don't need to know that. So those are just little tips and tricks there of how to use Surrendar. Another thing is Raid Notifier is extremely good for trials. If you're going for trials, you're going to want to have this definitely. You know, Wooler did a great job. These other guys did a great job. This add-on is very, very phenomenal. You know, you can turn off settings that you don't need to see, turn on settings. Good for raid leading as well. Raid leading, this is extremely good for the fact that you can call out multiple things. So when the call lightning comes down on you in AA, you can change this to all, and you can basically it'll pop up on your screen telling you the person that is getting this call lightning, so that you the raid leader can notify them if you're going for like a training run, if they don't know what's going on and they have the add-on, they see it but there's so much stuff going on their screen, they're overwhelmed. This information will be useful so that you can tell them what's going on, tell them what they need to do after that, and so forth. So there's little things here like that that are really good for raid leading. Unstable Void, as you know, extremely effective for raid leading. Tell somebody they got the little time bomb on them, you know, go to the wall, do etc. So that helps you with raid leading, also with self-awareness and like knowing the mechanics and stuff like that. I highly recommend. FTC. Now, FTC is here just for the health bars. I kind of like it. I've always had FTC. I had FTC damage before, but damage statistics before, scrolling text, all that. I kind of got rid of that over time and just stuck with just the health bars. You can use the in-game health bars, whatever. I just use FTC for the health bars. As you see, I have everything else off. Dressing room. Dressing room is very useful. There's other add-ons like dressing room. Basically what dressing room does is allow you to switch gear. So I have this hotkeyed as F4 and I can switch gear through all my different builds and so forth. So it's very good for when you're going through trials, that if say I want to play the Poison Knight, but I also, after the boss is dead, we got to go through some trash. I don't, right here it has my gear saved right here, but up here AoE, right? There's no gear. If I hover over AoE, there's no gear, just like this one. So what that means is I click set 2, where I can hotkey this on my keyboard, and I don't have to go to the window, but I can click this and it'll change my bar with my current gear and so forth. So that's how I kind of go about it. Another thing is Dark UI is just makes everything transition very nicely. Gives nice little borders and stuff like that. I know a lot of people ask about that. Dark UI is everything. The difference in why mine looks different like this. Transparent here. My health bars, everything's highlighted. Like my skill bars are black around the outside. Combat metrics is massive. Okay, so what this does is this allows me to understand where my damage is coming from, how I can set up my CP, right? So if we just do a couple skills on this guy. Boom. Okay, so we did some skills. And once combat ends, we can go into our combat metrics. You see at the bottom above my ability bar, that's where it's showing statistic there. But if I hotkey it, which I have it to number pad number 9, it'll come up and it'll give us this information. So for these targets, I did the most damage to these targets. These were in the back, probably didn't get much damage to them, etc. It's going to tell me my uptime. You know, thief is always going, food's always going. My minor force uptime, which is my trap, Flames of Oblivion, Hawkeye passive, which is important, Berserk, enchant, and so forth. So also what it's going to tell me is that my my max stats during the fight, my average stats during the fight, my drain, my stamina drain, how much drain, like how much stamina I'm using per second, and then how much I'm actually getting back per second. How much damage I did out of the group, which is weird. I don't know why it says 0. My DPS, and then you can go through here, and that'll be your single target DPS, the damage that you did. Then you can go through here and see 80% crit on hell. You know, this is how much DPS it did. This is how much damage it did. Non-crit crits. It did 47% of my damage in the AoE fight there that we had, and so forth. So basically, this is giving you a plethora of information, right? Not to mention, you can see your own healing done, your incoming damage, so that you can see what's killing you, how much it's hitting you for, that you can compare with other people. Maybe you need to change your red CP, very useful here as well. How much healing you're getting in terms of who's healing you, so you can see that maybe healer 1 is healing you for 90% of the time, and healer 2 is not healing you at all. So if situations where you're supposed to be getting healed by both and you're not, then you can kind of compare and look at strategies and see why that is. So this is a plethora of information and helps you to, not only with DPS, but strategy wise, with healing done, damage taken, etc. So this is a very important add-on to have, and I highly recommend this add-on. It's extremely good, and whoever made it is the mastermind of all. That guy right there. So Bug Eater, again, just takes up all those little messages you see on the screen, LUI, blah blah blah, message, something happened. This just basically suppresses them because they don't really matter. Not really sure what that is. So those are kind of the add-ons that I use, guys, that help me perform in a trial setting or in any setting, really, in dungeons, so forth, strategies, all that good stuff. So now that that's taken care of, let's look at some DPS. So I just have any old gear on, and I'm just going to look at the rotation for all the heavy attack builds. So Searing Venom, Poison Knight, Flame Knight, Mephalah's Web. I have all that. Mephalah's Venom. Yeah. So all the ones that don't need Maelstrom weapons, this is going to be the rotation for those, because they're all very similar. They're all the same. So with that being said, I just got 2 random headpieces and some gear here from the other sets. So the rotation, right? So when I start a fight, I like to put Trap down and then Hail, because they usually hit around the same time. If you're walking into a fight, you can do Hail, then put Trap down. They'll hit exactly the same time. Boom. And then you can do Injection. let's do it here. Let's say we're walking in on this guy. So before the fight, we want to do as many skills as we can before the fight, which will allow us more time while we're applying everything else. So I can do all of these. Come here. And just like that. So basically, on all the heavy attack builds, you're just going to be heavy attack dot, heavy attack dot. Another thing you can do, if you want to, is after you're coming in, you'll put trap down, hail, do a nice little injection, light attack, caltrops, light attack, oblivion, and then swap bars. When you come to the front bar, you have two things you can do, depending on how your stam looks, right? You can do heavy attack, then your dots, if you need stamina. Or when you come to the front bar, say you're doing all these, you can just come and apply them real quick. And then do a heavy attack. Probably applying them before you start just heavy attack route will increase your DPS. For the simple fact that they'll be, they won't be running, these dots won't be running while you're heavy attacking. No, they don't last that long. And so when you apply them to the boss and then you go do your back bar, right? And while you're doing your back bar, they're probably going to run out, right? And then see, if I did a heavy attack, they're running out now. So it does work out, but they'll have some downtime. So that's fine with this build. You don't have to keep up your dots a whole lot, like every second, like most builds. You're getting damage and resources from the heavies, so they're very effective. So you can just keep doing whatever dots you want to do. I usually come back to the front bar and do a heavy attack, then Venomous Claw. As we went over these skills and gear earlier, and passives. As you can tell, this one, it does a lot of damage. So that's why I always do this one first, then I do Rending Slashes, and then I do Noxious Breath before I swap. And I make sure Deadly Cloak is up before I swap. I do this Molten Armaments buff every 3 swaps. So this has a long duration. If you look at it, it's 40 seconds basically. And you can have a little bit of downtime on it. 39.6 seconds, basically 40 seconds. So every 3 swaps or 4, just depending on what's going on. So I like to apply it before I swap. So if we take a look at my bars here, my little tracker on the left, when we start this fight, I don't know why caltrops didn't go out. Then we just heavy attack, right? Do a Deadly Cloak swap. Caltrops is about to come out. You visually see it leave. Back to here. So if we look at the top of the dots here, you see which ones need to be applied. That's Sprindar doing all the work for you. So we know that these aren't up, these aren't up. Oh shit, I killed it. I didn't even notice. Anyway. Oh. Did not mean to kill it. So basically what I'm saying is, you can use this right here and only look at the top. That way you can see your feet. It's very important. If you see what I set up, how I set up my screen here, is I have my dots on my left. I have my health bar not by my feet, but away. This can actually be moved if you want to. You don't even need to see that. But I just keep it here because it's always been there. And so that gives me a big area to look at my feet, because I want to be able to see if I'm standing in any, shit. Very important. So if you look, this lasts 15 seconds, this lasts 40 seconds, this lasts 15 seconds, 12 to 14, it takes time to arm, whatever. This lasts 10, 10, 9, 10, or I'm sorry, 10.5, and 10. So we have a lot of duration on everything except for Rending Slashes. And yeah, just Rending Slashes in 9 seconds. A lot of 10-second things here. So what we need to do, and we need to understand, is that to keep these buffs up 100% of the time would be absolutely insane. It'd be insane. So doing the heavy attack rotation, having sustain through heavy attacks, we don't need to keep them up 100% of the time. Also, if you have high latency, this build is for you. I've got a lot of Aussies that message me about this build, or heavy attack builds in general, because they're easier to do with latency, because you just do a heavy attack, then you click a dot. Just like that. Wow, that hit from all the way over here. That's pretty good range. Good. Look at that. Whew. What's the range on the thing? 10 meters? Oh yeah, that's great. This candle right here, 10 meters. Nice. That's a freaking awesome range. Sorry, I just didn't notice that. So basically, my rotation is I buff up. So I have 2 buffs here. I go in and do the hail. Alright. So I'll go in and do the hail. Then I'll put the trap down. Light attack. Injection. Light attack. Caltrop. Light attack. Flames of Oblivion. That's my back bar. That's setting up my DPS, right? I don't use standard at the beginning of the fight, because what standard does is it increases your damage by 15%. And so what that's going to do is make my damage boosted for 17 seconds for 15%. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, if I haven't even done my front bar dots, why would I want to put down the standard, right? I would just be applying the dots, and then they would, being applied, they would gain 15% extra damage. But why not have them already up, gaining 50% extra damage? Remember that we get 12% increased damage on this skill every 2 seconds, so it's very effective that if it's in its mid to late range, that standard is up, this will hit very hard. So what I do is that I'll do a quick one and then we'll go over it. So I buff up, do my hail, trap, deadly cloak goes off at the same time, come to the front bar, start doing my rotation here. Deadly cloak is always up, needs to be reapplied before we go back. Put up my caltrop, same thing as before. And just like this. Then deadly cloak. You see deadly cloak's on the same timer as hell is. And just like that. Over and over and over. So it's fairly simple. Use whatever rotation that you like to on the front bar. If you like to just go down the line, say when you come back from the back bar, you like to do this, then this, then this. You know, whatever works for you, works best for you. I highly suggest doing Venomous Claw on the front bar. There's 2 different ways, like we talked about. You can do a heavy attack, dot, heavy attack, dot. So if you see my heavy attack, when I click the dot, it does, see this full rotation, like boom, I swing from the left, and then the daggers are back on my right side, like I'm swinging again from my right, right? But if you do a dot, they do that animation. They cut it a little short. So you don't need to do this, then a dot. You can do this, then a dot. So as soon as they hit your back part, whoop, that will be considered a full heavy. As soon as they hit, like a golf swing, right? So when you're pulling the golf club above your head, that's when you click it. Boom. Just like that. Easy. Super easy to do. And you just keep doing that. You just hold down that left click. Just keep clicking the dot. Extremely easy. Very effective DPS. And insane resource management. Insane. That's why it's so good. Because we can have all this damage up front all the time and have this resource. So that's it right there. If you have any questions, if something wasn't clear with the DPS rotation, please feel free to leave a comment below. Also, all of the add-ons that I talked about, or add-ons in general, maybe you want some other add-ons for something else, not just DPS, there's an add-on guide at pureturbo.com that you can visit as well. Raven wrote it up, so it's very, very, very good. I just want to throw that out there. So we just want to watch one fast rotation, back bar setting up our DPS, front bar doing our DPS, then going back to back bar, reapplying all of our dots, standard, then back to front bar. I'll do that for us real quick. So we're going to do some pre-game buffs. Take our pot, hail, ejection, light attack, outdrop, slide attack, oblivion flame, heavy attack, do our dots. Heavy attack, deadly cloak swap, trap, light attack, ejection, light attack. Oh, I forgot to do standard, but that's okay. Oh, I killed. Anyway, you guys get the idea, right? Just heavy attack on your front bar, apply your dots, back bar, light weave, everything, so that you get the Hawkeye passive. And drop your standard when you have all your front dots out. And after you reapply all your back dots. So we're going to swap cancel. If you notice, we swap cancel two things. I forgot to go over it. So we swap cancel two things, right? We swap cancel Oblivion, Flames of Oblivion. You see that I throw my hands down and I get this orb. Or I can just do this, swap. So we're swap canceling two things. We don't want this long animation of me throwing a tantrum. We just want quick, poof, we get the flame thing, right? Same thing with Deadly Cloak. We don't want to put our hands in the air. Do that. What we do is click it, move. It looks like we still do the same thing, but we're not. We're getting the swap thing. And I like to put trap here on my back bar because that's the first thing I'm going to click. So I'm going to click Deadly Cloak swap and then trap. So it's going to look like this. So I don't have to move my fingers on the keyboard, right? I just do Deadly Cloak swap, trap. And then while trap's going out, I hit 2. So I hit 3, swap, 3, hit 2 while that animation's going, and he already starts this. If you want to get a little bit more fancier, since we don't have the Maelstrom weapons, you can do Deadly Cloak swap, block, just like that. It's pretty fast, but at the same time, it's not really necessary. So trap, hail, ejection. You want to do light attacks in between all of them. So do Deadly Cloak swap. Just like that. It's a little harder to do the light attacks, so if you just want to get the rotation down before you start doing light attacks between everything, that is perfectly fine. And that's it for the DPS rotation, guys. Basically, what works best for you will be the best. So I want you guys to go around and play with this a little bit and see what works best for you. Maybe take some of what I did and add it into your rotation. You know, you can try and copy it. You can improve it. You can, you know, make it work for you. You don't actually have to do this exact rotation. Like I said, what works best for you will be the best. So let's go ahead and take a look at some DPS parsing on the 6mm dummy and be on.